Hello, I'm John Rossi, a touring drummer with a love of all things animal. When I'm on the road, I visit as many zoos, aquariums... Hey, wait a minute. What's going on? Hey, what's going on there? Hello? 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 We interrupt your regularly scheduled program to bring you Rossifari Zoo news. News you can use from the world of zoos and conservation. Every week, we bring you breaking news and analysis from around the globe, featuring the animals you love and the people who care for them. And here's your anchorman, John Rossi.
Hi, hello, how are you? Welcome back to Rossifari Zoo News, your look at everything going on in the world of zoos, aquariums, conservation, and general animal weirdness. My name is John Rossi, and as always, I am your host for this little adventure. And I'm excited to have you here for this week's episode of Zoo News. If you are a new listener, Zoo News is a crowdsourced news program. So if you want to contribute, you can do so by sending me stories to rossifaripod@gmail.com or tagging me in them on the socials at Rossifari or at RossifariPod on the TikTok machine. And I'll say your name at the end of the episode if you do. Good times all around. So I am here to say hello to you all from Fort Worth, Texas today. I have been rehearsing my latest production of $1 Million Quartet, which will be going live next weekend for a little over a week at Casa Mañana, a very cool, very wonderful theater down here. They are treating us incredibly well. We got cookies. We got sugar cookies with the MDQ logo in the icing. That was so fancy. I enjoyed it so much. And so far, the rehearsal process is going really well. Always have a good time with this. It's actually a director who's doing the show for the first time. His name's Parker. He's amazing. And it's really fun kind of getting to see a show that I've done, well over 700 times through new eyes, through fresh eyes. It's been really cool to see and experience this production of the show. So if you happen to be in the Dallas-Fort Worth area at all, I highly recommend getting your butt in gear and getting down to see the show. And let me know if you're going to. I've already heard from a good number of people that are coming out, and I'm really excited to catch up with some old friends and meet some new fans, and it's going to be awesome. I'm really excited about all of it, including the incredible facilities down here. Now, I've already lined up multiple interviews, many at brand new facilities, so I'm really excited about all of those. But I'm also really excited about the return facility that will be on as well, of course. You never know what's going to happen. I don't like to announce until the interviews have happened, just because life happens. But we've got some really cool stuff lined up for the trip down here. And don't forget, this trip ends, and as soon as my last Sunday matinee is done, I am climbing onto a plane and headed to Calgary for the annual AZA conference. So there's lots of craziness going on right now, and I'm really excited about all that. Of course, it also means that with things being crazy, don't be surprised if this episode is a little bit shorter than some Zoo Newses are, though I say that sometimes, but I never actually know if that'll be the case, because I record all of this in order most of the time. So right now, the episode is only 4 minutes long, but I can promise you it's going to be longer than that, especially as we get to...
Well, it's 1 for the pandas, 2 for the bears, 3 for the monkeys. Now you should care. Now won't you listen to Zoo News? Or you could do anything, but why not listen to Zoo News? Well, it's a Zoo News.
Oh, and speaking of MDQ, I forget if I mentioned this previously or not, but that voice that you just heard is Taylor Isaac Gray, of course, who does a lot of the music on the podcast with me. And he's also here doing $1 Million Quartet. He's playing Jerry Lee Lewis. I'm playing Fluke, obviously. And we're having a great time together. So if you come see the show, you'll get to hear not one, but 2 of the voices on the podcast. So anyway, that brings us to our headline story for the week. And it is a short but an important headline story this week. And then actually, I have a couple of updates before we get to the other stuff. But first of all, the headline story is that there is a breaking story from Turtleback Zoo in New Jersey. There's an organization that is located inside Turtleback Zoo in a building there. It's part of the zoo, but also independent, which is a pretty unique relationship. And this organization is called Sea Turtle Recovery. And as you can imagine, they help rehabilitate injured sea turtles with the goal of getting them ready for release. Their work is done in a building on the grounds that is open to the public, allowing Turtleback Zoo to showcase sea turtles along with their own collection, which, as you can imagine, makes it one of my favorite zoos to visit. Unfortunately, this past Wednesday night saw the Sea Turtle Recovery building get struck by lightning, setting the building on fire. The West Orange Fire Department rushed to the scene, as did Sea Turtle Recovery staff. The turtles were exposed to heavy smoke during the fire, but all were able to be removed from the building. They were rushed to a safe building inside the zoo for triage, and STR and zoo staff teamed up to handle the situation. Now, keep in mind, this was at night, so all of the staff from both STR and the zoo itself that showed up were just there on their own time, helping the situation. What absolutely incredible people. The rescue is currently taking care of a loggerhead, a green sea turtle, and 3 Kemp's Ridleys. The loggerhead, green, and 2 of the Kemp's were ultimately fine. The 3rd Kemp's Ridley, named Pickles, was already fighting a respiratory infection when this happened. During his emergency exam, his heart rate dropped super low, but the vets were able to quickly get him into a deep emergency pool, and the deeper swimming actually stimulated deeper breathing, which helped clear out the smoke. In a short amount of time, his breathing became regular and Pickles stabilized. That's right, the building was hit by lightning and caught on fire, and it looks like every turtle will have escaped without issue. The staff moved the turtles 4 hours away to the Atlantic Marine Conservation Society, where they are currently taking care of the turtles. Now, this story is obviously scary, but it's also amazing. Think of all the people who rushed in, giving up their nights to help this little building at the zoo and a couple of sea turtles. By the way, the STR staff worked through the night and into their normal day trying to take care of said turtles. They are preparing tanks and buying new dividers and buying new food and all that jazz at the new location the turtles are at. Fortunately, along with rescuing the turtles, they were also able to rescue the medicines and a lot of the supplies that were at the hospital. And so STR is facing, some challenges right now. They've got to prep these new tanks. They need to buy new dividers. They need to buy new food. They also have the additional cost of hotel rooms to take care of their humans that are taking care of the turtles that are suddenly, displaced. They're 4 hours away from their homes. So if you can do anything at all to assist with this situation, please go to seaturtlerecovery.org to donate directly. I have loved this organization for years. In fact, they were going to be on the podcast multiple times, but have always been super busy, taking care of sick turtles when I was going to be around. So we never actually got to do an episode there, even though they knew it would get them additional publicity. But priorities, right? The turtles are the priority. So maybe we can respect that and help them like they help sea turtles. So again, it's seaturtlerecovery.org to donate, and I will make sure to drop that in the show notes as well. Now, I mentioned that along with the headline story, I had a couple of updates from last week. First off, when I talked about the cruise ship in Australia that allows dogs, I guess I misunderstood the article I read. The Spirit of Tasmania is actually a ferry between the mainland and Tasmania, which takes about 12 hours. Dogs and other animals are allowed on the Spirit of Tasmania, but they have been confined to being in the vehicle area, sometimes even just being locked in the cars of their owners for the entire voyage. But now they'll actually be allowed to hang out with, the people in their cabins. So it's not a cruise, but it is a long ferry ride. And this is actually super important as over the years, animals have died from fumes or even just disappeared from the vehicle area, never to be heard from again, often assumed to have gone overboard. So this is much safer for the dogs in question, as well as much better because, it allows the humans to be with their animals and vice versa, which is just great. So not a cruise, still very cool. Then the second thing I wanted to touch on is we're going to call it an update about the Cleveland Metro Park Zoo story I shared last week, where I said that the rainforest would be going away. So I have a good update on that. The official position of Cleveland Metro Park Zoo is that the rainforest isn't going away entirely, though it will be shutting down in September, as I mentioned, and will remain closed for probably a few years. However, the main 2 floors of the rainforest are slated to be given a refresh and reopen as part of the new primate habitat in the building. So we will only be losing one of my favorite places for a few years, not forever, which is great. And hopefully it stays that way because I got my initial information from a keeper at the zoo. But, not everyone always knows everything that's going on. So, good news out of Cleveland. And that brings us to our births for the week. So it is red panda breeding season, but I don't actually have any red panda births to announce this week. But I do have one that's just as good. Zoo Miami has announced the birth of a tree kangaroo that is now old enough to start sticking its head out of mom's pouch. The Joey is doing well, and I am just so excited about this situation. Mystic Aquarium has announced the first northern fur seal pup born at the aquarium in 20 years. The little one is male and is a big deal for the population of northern fur seals in the United States, as this one makes 10 total found in aquariums around the country. Mom Kivli is doing a great job taking care of her pup, which has not been named yet. Knowsley Safari Park in the UK has announced the birth of a Somali wild ass foal. With only 200 of the species currently left in the wild, each and every birth is a huge conservation win, so congrats to the safari park. And speaking of the UK, Paington Zoo is currently having a flamingo chick baby boom, with numerous Chilean flamingos born at the zoo recently, and more expected soon. One of the births in particular has made headlines as the chick hatched to adopted parents. 2 male flamingos who are doing an incredible job raising their baby together. Elmwood Park Zoo, which was featured in my Tuesday interview episode this week, recently announced the birth of a female muntjac to parents Colby and Violet. Now, this little deer is absolutely adorable, and in case you didn't know, muntjacs are also known as barking deer because of the unique dog-like sound of their call. And then last but not least in births this week, Werribee Open Range Zoo has announced the birth of a southern white rhino calf. The baby weighed in at 60 kilos, or 132 pounds, and, as is standard for rhinos, came into the world after a 16-month-long pregnancy. Good grief. That's a lot for a little rhinelet, isn't it? And then that moves us to our deaths for the week, and we start off with the loss of an animal that truly meant a lot to me and has for many years. Adventure Aquarium has announced the passing of Anchor, the great hammerhead shark that called the aquarium home. Anchor spent 20 years at the aquarium, and his loss is truly a devastating one. The Ocean Realm exhibit at Adventure Aquarium is an amazing place. There are multiple sea turtles that call it home, as well as stingrays and a guitar fish, and just so much more cool stuff. I've always been able to lose myself at the viewing windows there for just hours. And honestly, one of the main attractions, even with all the incredible sea turtles there, was just seeing Anchor swim by. As one of the only great hammerheads in human care in the U.S., Anchor had the unique ability to inspire not only joy, but also literal amazement every time he swam by. It was just, you were seeing a thing that you're just not going to see, you know? And that place is never going to be quite the same without Anchor. Sending love to the incredible team at Adventure Aquarium. I've been fortunate to form such great friendships with so many people there, and also to feature so many people from Adventure on the podcast that this one hits hard at every level, as a friend, as a member of the aquarium, and of course, as, Rossifari. And this next one is tough, too, for a different reason. Obviously, I love the Jacksonville Zoo and have some great relationships there, especially with the vet team and some of the research staff there. And sadly, they are currently going through it, y'all. The population of apes at the zoo is currently being ravaged by the spread of Shigella. Now, Shigella is a bacteria that causes shigellosis, which is a disease that affects the intestines and causes symptoms such as diarrhea, vomiting, cramps, and dehydration. Although it is a disease that humans can get, it is much more devastating in ape populations, and it is just highly, highly contagious. And it can spread through feces and through food and through contact, and these are all things that, great apes are really into sharing, including the feces part. And sadly, as the disease first struck, Bolera, a 35-year-old western lowland gorilla, became the first to succumb to it. Since then, 2 bonobos, Jumanji and Jenga, also passed away from the disease. Both of these bonobos had existing heart conditions, which made them more vulnerable to Shigella. Jumanji was 16 years old and Jenga was 13. Here's hoping that these 3 losses will be the only ones the zoo suffers during this outbreak, which is still ongoing, and many of the animals are in various stages of the disease or the treatment for the disease. So, yeah, it's a tough one, y'all. Sending all the love to the incredible veterinary, keeper, and research teams that all love the apes at that amazing facility just so much. And last but not least, in our deaths section this week, the Hogle Zoo has said goodbye to Chimegwe, a beloved male snow leopard. Chim, as the team called him, was observed with muzzle swelling and drainage, and the team wasn't able to figure out exactly what was going on as his health rapidly declined. As such, the correct decision was made to humanely euthanize him. Chim was 12 years old, having lived his entire life at the zoo where he was born. He was known for being chatty, often greeting his keepers with yowls and mews. And the keepers weren't the only ones who got to experience his incredible personality, as he was often eager to interact with guests through the glass. And there is a silver lining to this goodbye. While Chim is gone, before this happened, he mated with a female snow leopard named Babs, and the mating was a success. Babs is currently raising her and Chim's offspring behind the scenes at the zoo, and the 2 cubs will be visible this fall, so at least his legacy lives on. And moving on from births and deaths, we get to the rest of our zoo news section. We start off with a follow-up to the stupid story from last week about a woman crossing a barrier to entice a tiger, which almost cost her her stupid hand. Police in New Jersey have allegedly figured out who said stupid person is and have charged her with defiant trespassing and the violation of 2 city ordinances for a grand total of 3 charges. I'm not going to say her name here, as I don't want to be part of getting her any attention, but police believe the 24-year-old did the same thing at a bear exhibit as well. What a moron. I hope that justice is served here. On a happier note, I love stories where zoos send staff members out into the field to help with conservation, which is why I'm so proud that the Maryland Zoo has sent their Director of Animal Facilities, Jess Phillips, to Namibia. She is there leading efforts to protect African penguins at the Namibian Center for the Conservation of Seabirds, where she is serving as the interim director. Her main duty there is to lead the team in training first responders on bird rescue protocols, which is very cool and very impressive work.
All right, we'll be back after this quick break.
Hi, this is Kathy Hill from the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program. We're all about restoration projects in progress this season on One Lagoon, One Voice. Learn about the great strides the lagoon community is taking to restore and protect the Indian River Lagoon. Each week, we dive deep into discussions with scientists, resource managers, and nonprofit leaders to explore lagoon issues and solutions. From oyster reefs to clam restoration, algae blooms to muck, you'll learn all about the projects we're tackling to bring the Indian River Lagoon back to health. Click the link in the show notes to follow One Lagoon, One Voice, learn about the IRL Council, and explore our unique lagoon.
Now we have a really, it's just one of these dumb and frustrating stories, in this case out of Toledo, Ohio. It's just the kind of thing that drives me crazy. But we'll start with the good part, which is that the Toledo Zoo runs a really cool conservation initiative that helps monarch butterflies. In over 100 sites around the city, including schools and businesses, the zoo has set up little prairie areas with milkweed and other plants that encourage monarch butterflies to stop by during their migration and even to mate and produce eggs, some of which the zoo takes in to Head Start. It's a very cool initiative that costs the city nothing, helps butterflies, and, thanks to some basic signage, lets people know that conservation work is being done there. Wins all around. But now, one of these prairies right outside the zoo has actually been mowed down by the city. The prairie in question was on the median of the Anthony Wayne Trail, which is one of the entranceways to the city of Toledo. And for years, people have complained that it's not worth having a conservation project that looks messy and, natural. These people felt that it gives people coming into the city of Toledo a bad impression, like a messy haircut being the first thing you see on a person, I guess. The mayor's office decided to listen to these complaints and sent out a mowing team to mow the entire project down to make it look neat and manicured, wiping out a conservation project in the process. And while there are already indications that the plants had deep roots and will start to grow back quickly, the mayor's office is committed to continuing to mow the area to make a good first impression to tourists, I guess. I don't know. To me, a better first impression is some naturalistic plants and signage about saving animals, weirdly enough, even if it does look a little messy. Zoo staff are currently seeking answers from the mayor's office about this decision, but in the meantime have accepted that this particular prairie is probably a lost cause at this point, and thus have shifted their focus to the other ones that are still running. Which, good call, smart decision, but it is astonishing how much people can just ruin things sometimes. On a much lighter note, the San Antonio Zoo has joined Elmwood Park Zoo and Cheyenne Mountain Zoo as AZA facilities featuring dog days. I'm hoping this trend will continue to move from facility to facility, as zoo visits can be exciting for dogs, great for owners, and can also provide some great enrichment for the animals at the zoo. Now, of course, not all zoo animals are into dogs, but the facilities that have done this so far are careful to figure that out or test with the dogs of keepers first, and then close off areas from doggy guests when it's not in the best interest of all involved. So, more dog days, please. And then last but not least in zoo news, the Seattle Aquarium has opened a new exhibit called Ocean Pavilion. It's based on a reef ecosystem in the Coral Triangle, a region in the Indo-Pacific that is so rich in biodiversity, it's been called the Amazon of the ocean. As of yet, you can't join Coral Triangle Prime, however. I kill me, and probably only me, but still. The exhibit features 3,500 plants and animals, including sharks, rays, fish, mangroves, and almost 30 distinct species of coral. Along with the plants and animals, the Ocean Pavilion uses state-of-the-art digital storytelling to teach guests that despite their different names, we truly have one ocean on this planet and that all waterways are connected. It looks like a really amazing experience for the guests of the Seattle Aquarium. And that brings us to
Stereotypical Animal Podcast theme song. Here to bring you to conservation news.
All right, so last week we talked about the oil spill off the coast of South Africa. First, as a follow-up to that, I did hear from many of you about the story, and not a single person who reached out had heard of it, except for from the Zoo News episode or from the post Sandcobb made about the spill. So, yeah, it's just kind of crazy that these things just don't get discussed too often anymore. They're not getting a lot of press. Sandcobb has released some new information, however, and it's actually really good news. No oiled seabirds or oiled wildlife at all have been recovered. So far, it seems that the cleanup efforts were fast and effective enough to keep the local wildlife safe, which is, frankly, astonishing. Now, obviously, this can change, but for now, things are looking as good as they can, for an oil spill. So, yay that. Okay, I am obsessed with this next story. Now, we often talk about all of the unexpected challenges facing conservation programs, things that the average person just might not think about or expect, and this is one of those. It involves the northern bald ibis, a bird that was hunted to extinction in certain areas of the wild by the 17th century, but has had a population revival thanks to breeding and rewilding efforts during the last 2 decades. The program has been successful, but it encountered quite the conundrum. How does a rewilded population of birds know how to follow proper migration patterns without having any adults from the wild there to teach the new members of the population? These are not instinctual migrators. They learn from their elder members of their flock. But there aren't any of those around. So the team raising and releasing the birds had to step in. Of course, they only even discovered that this would be a problem when they started releasing birds and realized they were disappearing and didn't really know which way to go. So, to prepare the birds for travel, the chicks are removed from their breeding colonies when they are very young. They are taken to an aviary that is overseen by human foster parents with the hope that the chicks will imprint on the humans, forming strong enough bonds that they will trust the humans even during migration. And these bonds are formed just like you would expect at a zoo or whatever, through husbandry and literally just like taking care of and loving on these little birds. The foster parents, this is where this gets crazy, then sit on the back of a microlight aircraft, waving and shouting encouragement through a bullhorn as the vehicle flies through the air through the migration pattern. A microlight aircraft is basically a flying go-kart with a big fan on the back and a parachute keeping it aloft. The crazy thing is, well, okay, that's all crazy. But the other crazy thing is the plan is actually working. Since implementing it, birds have started following the learned migration path both ways, not getting lost, and helping to grow the wild population through their own breeding, as well as the continued efforts of breeding in human care. So yeah, flying go-karts with fans and parachutes for conservation. I love this story so much. And speaking of stories I love, an organization called Wild Orca has started using a scent detection dog named Eba. Now, that might seem weird to you, as dogs live on land and orcas don't, but the dog is actually trained to sniff out killer whale fecal matter off the coast of the Pacific Northwest. Scientists take samples after Eba points them out and actually send them to the San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance's reproductive science team for analysis. Now, this analysis focuses on hormone levels in the whale poop, which can help scientists better understand orca health, reproduction, and behavior, which will hopefully lead to a better understanding of how to conserve the species in its natural habitat. I just love that they're using a scent detection dog for this. It's incredible. And then last but not least, in conservation news, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has announced the results of the 2024 Waterfowl Population Status Report, and they had some interesting tidbits in the report. For the first time since 2015, the number of breeding ducks has risen. This 5% increase from the previous year is a huge win after almost a decade of no growth. In general, duck populations are growing, with a 4% increase in prairie ponds and increases in 5 of the 6 duck species in the eastern United States. So if you are a fan of ducks, that's some really great news. In other news. So a group of hikers in the Sumatran mountains recently captured a photo of a Sumatran striped rabbit. The photo is blurry, but it's making headlines in the animal world as the rabbit is rare. How rare, you ask? Well, the first recorded sighting of one was in 1972, and the second recorded sighting was the one we are talking about right now in 2024. So if you want to see a blurry but incredibly rare photo, Google Sumatran striped rabbit photograph and take a gander. It's pretty incredible. And then one other thing that I want to address in other news. Let's talk about rattlesnakes for a moment, shall we? Now, snakes are one of those animals that a lot of people are afraid of, and frankly, rattlesnakes doubly so. But they are really amazing animals, and some new research shows they are even less scary than one might imagine. Scientists recently used a fake leg to physically step on 175 rattlesnakes. Now, to be clear, the fake leg wasn't super heavy, and the snakes were not harmed. Out of the 175 simulated steps, the rattlesnake in question bit at the leg a grand total of 6 times. The other 169 times, the snake either tried to get away, froze in place, or wriggled in surprise, but without an aggressive reaction. Rattlesnakes, by and large, are not trying to bite you. They just want to be left alone. I mean, honestly, they're basically me after a day of spending time with people. And while we are on the subject of demystifying rattlesnakes a bit, here are some other fun facts. Rattlesnakes don't rattle before striking. The rattle is a warning. It can be to warn a larger animal that they're in the same space, so, please don't step on them, or can even scare off some predators who hear it and fear the worst. But the truth is, when rattlesnakes do strike, it is generally an act of last-ditch desperation, and the strikes are usually noise-free. The time for rattling has come and gone if a strike is happening. But about those strikes, even rattlesnake bites often are only meant as warnings. As many as a quarter of all rattlesnake strikes don't involve the release of any venom at all. The snake figures that maybe if you're not willing to leave it alone when it's making scary noises, you will leave it alone if it bites you, but it doesn't need to use its venom. Of the ones that involve venom, only 1% of the bites are deadly to humans, and those are usually the ones that have severely delayed medical care involved. And honestly, that is, by the way, the correct response to a rattlesnake bite. If it does happen, get to emergency medical care as soon as possible, though it's not one of those things where it's like life and death, you have to get there right that second. It's not like that. But don't waste time doing things like icing it or placing a tourniquet on it or sucking the poison out, as it seems like every movie wants everyone to do. Just get yourself to a hospital and you'll be golden, because rattlesnakes really aren't scary and just want to be left alone. And actually, When you realize that, they're actually pretty adorable. Kind of love them, not gonna lie.
Animal, animal, animal holidays. Animal, animal, animal holidays.
All right, and that brings us to our animal holidays for the week, and it is August for one whole day still, which is Asian Elephant Awareness Month, National Catfish Month, National Parks Month, and August is for Antelope Month, and the 30th is International Whale Shark Day. Then that moves us to September, which is Save the Tiger Month and Save the Koala Month, and the 1st is International Primate Day, and the 4th is National Wildlife Day. Yay, all of those days. All right, so there you have it, folks. Another episode of Rossifari Zoo News is in the books. I'd like to take a moment to say thank you to my Red Panda level patrons, Dr. Laura Schenk, Dr. Stephen Williamson, Barbara Bennett, Jenny Owens, and Kevin Williams. I'd also like to say thank you to everyone who sent me stories this week, including Anya Keene, Colleen Lenahan, Kim Cooley-Croninger, Carrie Kirkpatrick, Kevin Williams, Emily Rockbuck, Anna Martins, Matt Padford, Ann Yoshioka, Dr. Laura Shank, Elizabeth Charles, Jay Meredith, Kristen Dickey, Ali Malensky, Kay Malensky,
The Malenskys.
Miles Rossi, Anna McEachran, and Yoshioka. I already said your name once, but I put it twice on the list, so you get to hear it twice. Lizard Dunleavy and Sue Isbell. Thank you so much to all of these people for contributing, and to all of you for listening. Don't forget to be back here on Tuesday for another interview episode, and until then, remember, friends, the words newsy credits backwards are Steider Giswen.
The Rossifari podcast is produced, hosted, and engineered by John Rossi. Editing and fact-checking by John and Dr. Zoe Rossi. Our theme song is Sevens by Nathan Burke, performed by Nathan and John. Interrupting John theme and additional voices by Taylor Isaac Gray. You can reach John directly on Instagram and Facebook at Rossifari or by email at rossifaripod@gmail.com. Rossifari is part of the Daydreamer Media Network. Now, stop listening to me and go visit a zoo.
The little one is male and is a big deal for the population of northern fur.